Hi, I'm Reed, and today we're talking about the weirdest of them all, the tentacly boys, the Morkoth. Welcome to Monstering, our series on taking creatures, threats and enemies from D&D lore, and customizing them to our own campaigns. This is Crowland Publishing. Let's get to it. Morkoth, man. Morkoth are strange ones. This might be a bit of a long vid because they're enormously cool, enormously underrated, and really could use a bit of a rethink as far as the lore goes. Briefly, they are octopus people, they are squid people. But they are more complexly, they are kind of chimera creatures. They are elements of human body, seal body, octopus body, and squid body, cuttlefish body, shark bodies, everything that's horrific in a sea creature, put it into the form of a human and let it go. That's a Morkoth. They're smart. They're very, very smart, actually. They are desperately unsociable. You are supposed to never encounter them outside of a lair. And they're actually quite powerful. They're CR rating 11, so there's a fairly broad range of parties you can challenge with that. And they have a lot of spell-like abilities. And they also have charming and hypnotic powers, which are always a bugger for everyone with a low will or wisdom save. Have a look at the art that I'm going to put around the place of the Morkoth, because their bodies are really, really strange. Even, in fact, contradictory. I would use this as a part of the lore of the Morkoth. No one's really sure what they look like until you get too close to them and you realize that there's all these horrific things that comprise their physical form. I really, really emphasize tentacles and the clacking beak because they really scare me in real life. So the big eyes, as always, I think that bioluminescence is an important part of a sea animal, especially because Morkoth have a lot of hypnotic attacks and things like that, a lot of charms. So, it unfurls its body. Maybe it's wearing a seaweed robe or something, and look into the dead lights starts happening. It begins to flash on hypnotic lights that eat me. So creepy. It's big too. 7 or 8 feet tall. Not as big as Noga, not as big as a giant, but enough to really tower over and aphex twin your party if it really wants to. I give them barnacles, I wrap them in seaweeds, I give them stingray spines, I give them, as always, weird breathing organs that just kind of suck open and suck closed. It's really just a matter of finding what you find intimidating in sea life. Moray eels and their creepy double jaws, things like that. Really have a look, have a think about what you personally find intimidating in a sea creature, which should be a lot because they're out to get us, and assign that rather to a Morkoth. Just give it to a Morkoth, put it into a human body. Typically, they hang out in lairs. Now, the lairs are really interesting because they are spirals. They are always described as being in spiral in nature, which we'll come to in a minute. Not sure if they make them. There's no real sort of rules on that, but I imagine them salvaging them or tending coral to make them into these trans-dimensional fortresses of bizarrosity. Sometimes they're described as liking subterfuge, so gossiping and bad betrayal and backstabbing, but they're also described as pathological loners, so figure out how that works. They serve Krakens. Krakens are fantastic campaign bosses, so feel free to throw in that if you need ever to learn things about a Kraken, you've got to go to a Morkoth's lair to interrogate it. And that's kind of it. There's just not a whole lot of solid set in stone information about the Morkoths. And I think that they're amazing bodies, they're fantastic spells, they're pretty high challenge rating, and just their general menace of creepy, weirdo, horrible monster that lurks beneath the waves. There's lots you can do with the Morkoth, and I think that they are deeply underrated, so let's have a think about reimagining them. As always, you need to go back to the pop culture and to the mythology that informs a creature in the first place when you want to reimagine it. And the good news is with Morkoths, there's not a whole lot of that. There's an eel-man cryptid. There's things like selkies and mermaids who lure you to your doom, but that is not the same as a horrible squid person under the black ocean waiting for you to come along and then dragging you into a lair and eating you horribly. But it's a good start. You could use sirens or mermaids as a basis. Perhaps a Morkoth has like an island or something, and it keeps a slave out there to lure people in. So you're sailing past on your ship. Oh, look, there's a person, a castaway. I better go and rescue him. But of course, the slave is deeply insane, is kept alive only by a diet of fish that the Morkoth feeds it, and is there specifically to be a Judas goat. So you go, oh, I'll come and save you. The Morkoth jumps you. I don't think it really scans in the way that, say, a deep one from Lovecraft or a sea devil from Doctor Who does. It's not the same creature. You could maybe use it as old Craig from the Mighty Boosh if you really, really wanted to and you're a fan of Bailey's. But I don't think that pop culture actually gives us a whole lot of models for Morkoths. I think that they're a blank slate. So here's how I would imagine them. They are a race of dark mystics and horrible adepts who specialize in the lore of the ancient sea. There's two things that hint at this. The first is that they're actually fairly powerful spellcasters. They have a lot of spells and pretty high. I think it's 6 level spells. So I always imagine that as either these are just powers that they have, which I don't like in this case, but they are sorcery that it's learned, wizardry that it's learnt. They are adepts. They know things. They search them out, which indicates to me that they are pilgrims. They are looking for something. And the other is that spirals. They live in these spiral lairs, which we know do not really obey normal laws of physics. And if those last few years of pop culture has taught us anything, it's that the spiral is a symbol of a kind of black transcendence. The black spiral dances of White Wolf. Uzumaki, the remarkable comic in which spirals escalate from simply symbols of horrific body horror and end up as symbols of cosmic malevolence. And of course, True Detective Season 2, Time is a Flat Circle. Spirals are a symbol of our eternal suffering. So, keep the spiral. Keep the spiral as an important element of the Morkoth. It's strange, it's creepy, it will have this resonance with players. Even if they don't immediately recognize it, they will just know that the spiral is somehow unpleasant. And so, there you go. That's a Morkoth. It essentially is as of a dark mystic. They're often aligned with sea powers, like krakens, as I said, but aligned, or even in service of, is not necessarily a slave of. I see them maybe more in the service, or more in the nature of Nazgul, sea Nazgul. They do worship a sea god. They are in the service of a sea dragon. They do worship a monstrous water elemental, something like that. But it is not simply a case of, yes, master. It is not simply a case of that they are scared into submission. It's that they have goals. Those goals are in line with these particularly monstrous powers. They are too clever to really just be a lackey or a henchman. One final thing. We're told that they don't really value treasure. I don't like this at all. That they will prize junk over traditional value. I think that's foolish because they're smart. They know that other people like money. They know that other people like magic items. They know that other people like all this business. So they are likely to have it just because you never know. And because they are seeking out power, they are seeking out knowledge. And they're spellcasters. They know what a rod is, they know what a stave is, and they know what a scroll is. They're going to use them, and they're going to use them against the players. So, but I think that as a way to keep that as a fun little element, without making them too sort of Jim Henson-y, you know, like throwing gold over the shoulder and going like, pencil. I don't like that. But they might be sitting there. You might be, you know, watching them as they go through things like 3 spoons, 7 glass shards. Yes, the prophecy is true. Now I understand. And they are finding wisdom, and they are finding omens, and they are finding signs from their malevolent entities that they worship or seek to propitiate in these seemingly random messages. And they might not be wrong. Lastly, you can also probably reskin a Morkoth to be hanging out in the astral plane or something like that as an extra dimensional predator. You, if you want to do a nightmare scenario, the astral plane in D&D is the place where you go when you sleep and when you dream. Well, at least that's how I've always done it, because that's what it is in real-world folklore and real-world magic practice. So, if you want to do a shared dream, bang, there's a Morkoth. A Morkoth has staked out the geographic location of where your people dream in. And so you could do like a great why aren't people waking up? And they're in the dream Freddy Krueger realm. There's a Morkoth. Alright, so how do you actually use a Morkoth in your campaign? The traditional way is just that it is a lair hunter. It waits for you to come to it. You go into the lair, and then an alien-style grim cat and mouse continues. It's a pretty solid idea for a scenario. It works. Go for it. It's easy to do as well. But I really do think that if you look outward from that very simple idea, you can really get a lot more mileage out of the Morkoth. I think that an undersea campaign is probably the best place to encounter them. I don't know why you would ever play that. It sounds terrifying, but say that you're a sea elves or Locather or a race of undersea humans, something along those lines. Something is preying on your herds. You might be raising fish and sharks and dolphins and sea turtles and all that stuff. Something is preying on them. That's a Morkoth. Take that up to number 11. Make the Morkoth a kind of Count Dracula of the undersea. Not in that it's running around with a cape and turning into a sea bat or anything like that, but it has a well-known, fearsome lair. I always imagine, you know, there's that undersea footage of where you're going along and then suddenly, bang, a huge abyss. They scare me. Or one of those blue holes. Imagine that the Morkoth lives, its lair is in the side of a huge ocean cliff, a place of fear and supernatural dread, superstitious awe for the locals. And every now and again it emerges to look for a comely sea elf maiden or a handsome Locather youth to take away to its lair. That's what I mean by a Dracula-like fear. A powerful aristocratic hunter of the sea night. Or, I really do like the idea of them as dark mystics, so I'm going to come back to this a few times. So that you are, again, running in, say, a sea elf campaign. You serve the Queen of the Sea Elves. She has a need for a Morkoth advisor. She brings one in, sets it up, and slowly but surely it sort of grandma worm tongues its way into power. It has hypnotic powers. It starts hypnotizing nobles. It starts spreading gossip and lies. It uses its magic to advance its purpose, and sooner or later, its totems start spreading throughout the city, and the nature of the Sea Elven Kingdom begins to darken. Alright, so for both combat and social encounters, we really do need to look at a bunch of its powers that happen within the lair. I view the lair as being something that is turned into a hyper-geometric, weird space that the normal rules do not apply in. I would give it a bit of a cheat, actually, that any round it's not in combat, it can dimension door and just appear anywhere within the lair. There is a reason why the lair is so important to the Morkoth, and that is one of them. It can move around the space like nothing else can. It does not exist in regular space-time when it is within the lair. And it has a lot of spells. So I would do things like Evard's Black Tentacles. Great spell. You know, really, you're held back and it's closing in on you, teeth clacking, beak clacking. That's creepy. But also, have it so that it extends its arm out one way and then the tentacles attack you 25 feet down the corridor. It's just an Evard's Black Tentacle spells, but you've just reskinned it and it looks really, really scary. It might have a spell like Shatter, which I would use underwater. I would actually give an extra shockwave attack to as it tsunami spreads out from where the shadow takes place. Again, using the water and using the lair to benefit it is what a Morkoth will do. It can make its water breathable, which means that it can talk to you if you want to. I think that there is scope for it to receive visitors, that you might have a reason to visit a Morkoth and a Morkoth might have a reason to let you in. I think that's also a unique in combat encounter because it can, well, not snap its fingers, obviously, but you know what I mean. It just can immediately kill you, drown you. You know, you're trapped kilometers under the water in the complete crushing darkness at any point in time. So you either need to be sure that you've got a way to survive that, or you need to be really, really polite to the Morkoth. And more importantly, is that if you've got kidnapped victims that you're trying to rescue, you're going to have to be very careful because it's just a free action, you know, just bang, drown. Be very, very careful with it. And finally, the Hypnotize. Its big move is a Hypnotize. It's just a charm person, so it can't tell you to kill yourself or to attack your mates or anything, but it can certainly get, and I think you can get up to 3 people at once. And absolutely, it's smart. It's going to know to go up to the barbarian and the fighter with the low wisdom slave kind of creatures. And it can definitely say to them, go and wait in my larder. Go. Not necessarily great because it does take players out of the action, but it's a cool power and you should use it. It's the signature power of the creature. So bring it on stage. Let it happen. Alright, role-playing something like a Morkoth is a bit of a challenge. It's fairly alien. But there are some hints as to how it would act. And the first is that it is an evolved predator. It is smart. It is smarter than almost anything it is ever going to meet. So everything is prey. And what is prey is contemptible to it. It will just eat you because that's all you are good for, is a meal. I also feel that there should be a bit of a dichotomy between this fairly intelligent, aesthetic creature who does know about spells, who does know about magic, who does have goals, and its bestial nature that you can see it as it's there in its seaweed robes. It's hidden from you. You see the occasional tentacle come out of its face. But something happens to it. Something, blood is spilled, or pain, or something along those lines, or it's insulted, and it throws off this robe, and tentacles and a writhing beak or moray eel jaws come spreading out, and it squeals, and it's at you, and its beak is, and it's just, it can't help itself. It's in a frenzy of bloodlust. Well, not a frenzy, it's not a game thing, but it really wants to eat you, and it hates you, and it just doesn't care. It just thinks of you as food. So the dichotomy there between the ancient wisdom of the Morkoth and the shriek. Jesus, that'd be bloody terrifying, wouldn't it? Squid Man coming at you in the dark. So that's some ways to roleplay it. I think that it could be obsessed with occult information and hidden spiritual information and really get into it. And also is that it is afraid and intimidated by certain kinds of sea creatures like krakens and all the rest of it. It seeks them out and wishes to serve them. But primarily it has this mysterious dark lore of the oceans that it's seeking out. You can decide what that is for your campaign. I think that's a pretty good role-playing hook for a Morkoth. Half smart, half horrible squid monster. So adventures and what players should know going into an adventure. As ever, there's 4 skills that are helpful here. Arcana. Arcana might suggest that Morkoths have their own kinds of spells and magic So you want to do something like a Learman's tiny hut might be somehow grafting itself into the weird hypergeometry of the Morkoth lair, or Evard's Black Tentacles again could be an extension of the body of the Morkoth, and if you want to learn that, well, that sort of business. Natural law should tell people everything. They're a weird race of loners. They're quite powerful. They know magic. Their lairs are very, very well guarded by them. Give people that sort of knowledge. If they've spent the points on it, they're going to know that sort of stuff. History, look, if you think that a Morkoth has made an impact enough that someone would write down folktales or information about it, go for it. I think that it's always useful to have, like, well, the old man, my granddad told me that he saw it one day under the full moon. I think it's good to know things. I think it's good to build up to foreshadow a creature, so let them have it. Religion, maybe you know the Morkoths religiously revere Kraken. Maybe they're even Kraken warlocks of a kind. Maybe they... maybe weird Morkoth religion is quite important to your campaign somehow. Maybe what they worship, will be an important part of the campaign. And lastly, some adventure hooks. Classic number 1. You are shipwrecked. You end up in an underwater cavern, or you've somehow ended up on the ocean floor and you find the entrance to the Morkoth lair. You enter in. An HR Giga style encounter occurs as the alien chases you all around. Classic, traditional, always a good model for an adventure. 2. So a Morkoth has been somehow cast out of its lair. Something has taken over its lair. I would say a Sahagún mutant noble or a particularly intelligent and vicious aboleth. Desperate, it hires the adventurers to reclaim its lair. And of course, the second it's over, it turns on the adventurers, and now the lair encounter continues, but it's with a creature that can move around it freely, so don't work for Morkoth, I suppose. Number 3. So say you're in an undersea campaign, or at least you're having some adventures that are happening undersea. Let's go back to that Dracula idea. Count Squidula has been preying on the comely seahorse maidens for far, far too long. The players are told, you need to go and deal with it. It has an army of, undersea ghouls, or what are those, undersea trolls or something like that, that serve it. But eventually you're going to have to go into the lair and do the equivalent of driving a stake through its heart. I would say that you need to add for this particular adventure some kind of specific weakness to get that cut off the head, fill it with garlic vibe to a Count Dracula. Really play up the gothic creepy castle too. Number 4. The Morkoth's lair travels. It is a submarine vehicle of whatever flavour you want to give it. Now you need to talk to the Morkoth or fight the Morkoth, but you need to lure it up to the surface, or you need to find a way down to get into its submarine and then deal with it. I think that you get a great series of adventures out of that, of learning the water breathing magic, or the magical song that will lure the Morkoth up out of the depths, or any of that sort of business. And then, of course, you've got the cool lair adventure that happens after that. And the last one, number 5, you're just in a quiet seaside town or city. Suddenly, sea giants or gigantic Guy N. Smith crabs or land sharks or whatever start attacking the town. Turns out that your seaside town for a long, long time has worshipped an idol of a sea goddess. But that sea goddess actually was part of like an Atlantis-style sunken undersea kingdom that the Morkoth is obsessed with. And it wants the idol that your town has been worshipping for a long, long time. And if it gets it, it will become very, very powerful, so that's bad. Alright, so there you go, Morkoth. I highly recommend that you reskin them as these weird shamanic figures, as weird, horrible mystics. I think that you can get a lot of use out of them. I think they're really creepy bad guys with a fantastic visual, cool lair, and play them right. You will have a really memorable encounter that your players will remember. And that's what you're after. Alright, liking, sharing, subscribing, you know how YouTube works. It very much helps me out. Hope you've enjoyed this. I'm Christian. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.